before we get started with our conversation, could you quickly introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Sandra Reichl. I'm originally from Upper Austria, moved to Vienna, I think 20 years ago, and I'm the co-founder and creative director of A Passion Thing, and we are a branding agency, and we own our own magazine. That's basically it. I co-founded that 4 years ago with my partner Karin Novosamsky. We're leading a team of 8, 9 now, and we're based in Vienna. And from there, we work with all sorts of clients, lots of lifestyle clients. Some of them are Austrian, most of them are international.
Seems familiar.
Yeah.
Super cool. So before we talk about your branding agency, can you quickly take us back to when you got started as a freelancer? Like, how did that happen and how did your start look like?
Mm-hmm. My whole career path was quite classical, I would say. I was always the kid that drew a lot. I was like doodling all day. It became pretty clear to my parents that they want to support me. So I went to a high school that had a focus on art and design. From there, I graduated being 18 or 19. And it was like, okay, now I want to pursue like a creative job. My dad is an architect, so I thought interior design, but then I thought like maybe something in theater, doing the backdrops, or doing industrial design. But in the end, I went to the University of Applied Arts, looked at all the classes, and the advertising class stood out to me the most. So I tried, not knowing that there are only 7 people that are going to be in the class a year, and they accepted me. So it was not really like a master plan. It was very natural for me. So I got this 5-year master degree for art direction, really. I worked all my youth, starting with like 14, 15 in ad agencies, learning the craft from like really good graphic designers, very down to earth stuff. And then I worked in agencies going through uni. I worked in a lot of creative agencies like Jungformat, very conceptual and idea driven agencies. And when I graduated, I worked in a couple of classical advertising agencies. By the age of 27, I was like, okay, this can't be it. It's like too much of the same, being like, okay, now we're doing a campaign, doing print, radio, and TV. And at that time, I knew I wanted to go more digital, more into strategy. And I did a postgraduate that was called Hyper Island at that time, like a 1-year postgraduate in Stockholm. And from there, I went to Stockholm, to New York, and to Berlin. And living abroad, it was very clear that I only can be a freelance and I don't want to be employed, because I knew it was like it came down to a year or half a year in those cities. And when I came back after like 2 years of living abroad, I founded my own studio because basically I understood I couldn't be an employee any longer because my focus had shifted. I did a lot of strategy abroad. I did a lot of design thinking abroad. And coming back 2011 to Vienna, it was very split. So like it was either strategy, like studios, or like design and advertising studios. And I always knew I wanted to combine those two things. So I started my own studio and led that basically for 10 plus years until I met Karin, not really on purpose. We had a lot of common friends, and we worked on one project. Then we realized after 2 years that we only have been doing all projects together. Karin had her own studio at that time as well. And then we joined forces and kind of merged our two studios 4 years ago into a passion thing. And that has been going on for those 4 years now. So I feel like the focus or the going abroad and shifting the focus to having strategy and idea first, and then come in with design and communication after, that has been the red thread ever since I came home and came back. And that's basically also what we try to do in at the passion thing, is to always start with a strong strategy. We do a lot of positioning work for brands, which then leads to a lot of redesigns, a lot of corporate designs, and then eventually into communication and long-term communication, and also long-term partnerships, really.
Wow. Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here. I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Well, and first of all, I'm really curious because we've also been working together, and I think that you did a little bit of freelance on your own before we joined forces. I haven't really done that much alone, to be honest. So my question is, how was it like working as a duo moving forward versus working alone? Like, were there any challenges that you've had adapting, or was it like kind of like a natural flow?
I feel like it always depends on the person, because going from agency life and being a creative director in agencies, and then going abroad, uh, ever since I started to work on my own, I always worked with teams, smaller or bigger. Um, and Karen is not my first business partner. I had business partners before, and I founded little studios before, with like copywriting partners, with like another strategy partner. So I always tried to work in duos. Some lasted 3 years or 4 years. Some lasted only 1 year. So I had a lot of experience and learnings from it. And with Karen, especially now, we are a perfect match, as in our expertise. We kind of accomplish, we're alike, but then we're not. Karen has a very strong strategic background. She comes from client service. So thinking classically or traditionally, again, I'm like the creative head, and she's like the strategy and the more organized person, which for me is the perfect fit, because before I also had partners that were creatives, like maybe coming from copy, but also maybe coming from art direction. Um, and I felt like there were different challenges with different people, right? So with Karin, it has been a very smooth sailing, because I feel like our values are aligned, our how we work, our work ethics is very much the same, and then everybody has their specialities and knows where they're good at, and together then we can um, lead our team, and everybody has their own responsibilities. So that's like a no-brainer. But I feel like because we are so aligned when it comes to values, work ethics, how we work, how speedy we work, how disciplined we work. And before I had issues with a lot of partners not aligning the values, not aligning how we work, not aligning what we meant when we talked about discipline or processes. So I always feel like it comes down to the people, and it's a people business. It's very personal. So for me, the last 4 years have been very, easygoing, but that comes down to Karen and I being the people we are, and also the experience or the experiences we had, because we actually got to know each other very late in our careers. We had Karen is a couple of years older than me, so she has even more experience, even more, milestones in her career path. Um, and maybe it would have played out differently if we would have met sooner, but we met when we were, grown into the business and had our experiences and careers already.
Okay, that sounds really beautiful. Sounds like when you're dating and then you find your match. Kind of.
Kind of. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
it's kind of
always
like that,
joke
no?
about it. Like
Yeah,
American.
We
we do.
also, yeah.
Yeah, we do the
We
same.
do the same. The thing is, like, legally speaking, having a business together is kind of like being married because you have like assets together. It would be super complicated to divorce. And so we also joke about that all the time.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
depends
so
on the contract. We have like a
Yeah.
very solid contract with
that's
one
true.
another.
That's true.
Yeah, so do we. But that was something that the lawyer told us, like, you have to have a really solid contract
Yeah.
because, you know, you get along now, but you might not later.
Yeah, it could
Yeah, and you
happen.
always have
Yeah.
to prep if things might not be as like, shiny and pink. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's also where we align very much. We're very emotionally and intuitively driven, but at the same time, we are both very pragmatic and rational in terms of a lot of things. And I also feel like it helps that we don't have huge egos, and it has never been about money for us.
Wow, we seem
So
so alike. I don't know. I
Yeah.
yeah,
see a lot of similarities. Maybe I'm projecting. That's also possible, but
let's find
I don't
out.
know.
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out. When I was going through your profile, I was kind of like projecting. So let's see where this goes. You mentioned that you had like studios before. When you
Hmm.
had those studios, did you have employees there as well, or were you just operating as a duo?
The studios before were mainly built around a huge network of freelancers. Me having worked in several agencies and me having worked in um, all across the country, but also in different countries. Um, I built a network of, let's say, 30 to 40 super solid people. And for the 10 years of my solo studio, I would always, get the right people into teams and be leading those teams. And that worked fine. Every time I had a studio with one person, we sometimes had interns, we sometimes had like one or two employees, but never grew bigger than, let's say, 3 or 4 people, and continued to work with that network of freelancers because I always felt that was, at that time, it was perfect because we could bring on experts that were super perfect for specific projects. A lot of them were super experienced, so they also could take on responsibility. And that was the way for me to go like 10 plus years. A lot of awesome freelancers, which changed with Karen and I building a passion thing because the project also got bigger, I assume, and with bigger projects and more demanding schedules and responsibilities, we eventually grew our team from also starting with like 2 employees, so 4 of us, growing into like now 10 people.
Wow. How was that for you, growing from a small studio into something bigger? I'm asking because I remember this huge responsibility that we felt when we had more employees, when we had a bigger team, and it was really difficult to navigate that responsibility, not just in terms of financials, but also in terms of, I don't know, having like a how do you say Umfeld? I'm so sorry, I forgot that word.
Environment.
Yeah, thank you. Having that environment that everyone finds fitting. I don't know. It's just really difficult to manage a big team.
Yeah, I feel like, I think there are so many components you have to think of. And if you don't think of, you eventually have to, uh, you know, wrap your head around it. I think I always was like, maybe I was always a natural leader, although I don't like to say that because I did lead like big teams in agencies really at a really young age. I kind of dove into that like full heartedly, and it was always very natural for me to lead a team of, let's say, to up to 8 or 9 people. So it's not really different for me now than it was, like, let's say 15, 20 years ago. The responsibility, I think everybody handles that differently. You have your ups and downs. For me, the biggest challenge was to find a balance between I love my job and I love to be a creative and I love to execute projects and be an art director and also design things. And then the balance of the more people you have, the more people you need, time, need, one-on-one time. The teams need exchange of opinions. So the balance of you doing your work and being a creative and managing things sometimes feels like it's out of balance. And then sometimes like the managing part takes over. So you might get frustrated. And that for me over the last years, and every time bigger teams came on board, I always had to, find a space where I'm good with being a creative, working hands-on projects and managing stuff, because I always knew that only managing is not my cup of tea. It still is not. So I have to cherry pick some things that I get my creative satisfaction to some extent, even though, we are working on only creative projects, and in the end, being part of the team with other team members, it's still a lot of creative work, but again, it's not working hands-on a lot of times. And for me, that was way more of an issue to find balance than, let's say, bigger payroll because more people, right? I feel like with Karin, I feel very safe that we always have enough, projects to support ourselves and to support our employees as we promised. We have been growing very naturally. We are very much aware of, is it too quick of a growth? Do we really need more people? And we also, when we founded the company, we agreed on a specific amount of people being the maximum, which we have reached, because knowing from our previous experiences, agencies and studios, there comes a time where you have to decide if you want to stay small and boutique or grow it into a bigger agency, and which has a different structure, which has a different need of clients and projects, and which basically replicates specific groups of people and teams. So you have a team and then you replicate it, and then you have like 4 of those teams or 10 of those teams. And we always agreed that we're not going to go there. So I already knew what I was going into, and the amount of people we're managing right now is very natural for us. I feel like, would it be more? I wouldn't know, because beyond that, I never wanted to manage people, and I never did. So the size we are now is perfect for us. Comes with the experience and was very natural. And for me, maybe I don't know if it's something subjective, but I was never really afraid of money, or I never had big pressure of not being able to, own enough to support the system. And I feel like that helps being a CEO or entrepreneur. That some people are super under pressure, seeing payrolls or being aware of their payrolls. And that was never the case for me. I don't know, maybe I have a different money than other people, or it's my upbringing, or it's my being pragmatic and knowing you can always find a way out somehow, as long as you plan accordingly and you look ahead and you don't just live in the moment. So I feel like Karin and I are very good in planning things. which might not be every creative person's, tool.
Yeah. No, I don't definitely think that it's a quality that you need in when you're running a business is one to take risks a little bit. So not being scared by the numbers. And then also understanding that there are always ways to generate more income, especially if you've done it before in the past. Why wouldn't it work again? I think that's something that always makes us feel safer in times when there's less coming in. We're like, well, it's always picked up, or we've always found a way to generate more income. So it's always been okay. And yeah, planning. I think a lot of people at the beginning don't plan ahead enough. Like they don't plan like a year in advance. They're just kind of living month by month. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make.
Speaking
I
of
feel like it's
mistakes.
natural. You just have,
Yeah.
you have to experience different forms of or different evolutions of a studio, and I feel like going from maybe a system that's existing to freelance, to then doing more of your own projects, to then growing more of your own clients. That's like, you can't really, there's no shortcut probably in our industry. You can't, I mean, not until the educational system provides more insight and more training for people to become entrepreneurs. And I feel like in creative industries, people a lot of times come out of school, uni, whatnot, and they don't really have any relation to how to do numbers and to calculate projects. And that's like a pity, because then they have to learn the hard way. Some of them will fail and never, try again, and some of them will have ups and downs and learn on the way. And I feel like for us, it's a lot of experience. We know how much we need. We plan a lot. We have a big network. We always have been, I think, good with our former relationships where, we can draw from a humongous international network. And that's not only for our creatives if we need them, but also we hardly ever had to, do or fish for jobs, because it eventually resolved itself in word by mouth, in people recommending us. And if we joined forces, it actually even got more, and it elevated itself because we were both really good in networking. And I don't mean that network events, but staying in contact with really nice and good people around the globe, and that eventually will help you. I feel like if creatives are too much in their head, or not aware that a lot of the business you can build is actually not about how beautiful you can design stuff, and a lot of things is about planning, about understanding numbers, about networking, about being nice to people, about showing up for people, about helping others, about it's so much soft skills and so much other tools you need, that design or creativity is just like a percentage of it. And I'm not talking big percentage. How do you present yourself? How do you do presentations? How do you communicate? Are you actually good in navigating people, guiding through people through projects, also clients? Do you educate them? Is that is that a value you have, or a purpose you think is helpful? And I feel like through the years you find out that creativity, design, and all those skills you think are like crucial, you have to be good at, but it's not everything.
Definitely. 100% agree. I think you wanted to ask a question about making mistakes, or
yeah, I lost that thread, but I have another one.
Okay.
There are a lot of questions in my head. One question is that you mentioned that, you didn't mention it, I actually researched it, sorry, that you have been mentoring people and you had like a lot of conversations with young creatives. And I was curious how that came about, because I saw that you had it was a bit longer ago. I'm not sure if that format still exists, but in Design Austria, you had a format where you were mentoring young creatives where they could ask you questions, right?
Mm.
Is this still
Yeah.
something that's ongoing, or?
It's not ongoing due to the growth of our team. I'm mentoring our team more than other people, but I did that for a couple of years. It was called Frag Frau Sandra, which was like a funny little twist of being personable but also being experienced at the same time. And why I started this is that I always had amazing mentors. It was my professor at uni, being like Walter Luther. He was like a he was like a pro and a crazy person at the same time, but I learned heaps from him. I had amazing creative directors in my first agencies. I always had supporters and people that actually cared about whether I learn stuff and understand stuff or not. And when I entered the real life and the agency life, I already felt that this was changing, and that nobody really, mentored young people. And at the same time, it also damaged our industry, because a lot of young people at that time when I started mentoring came out of uni, started their studios, and were dropping prices like crazy, which I feel like is never good, but it's not their fault. It's like due to not knowing shit about it. And then I started to do those group sessions, and then I started to do one-on-ones, and it ended up being like a mix of looking at portfolios, helping them to set up their contracts, looking at their numbers and how they would calculate projects. And I did that for, I think, 3 years plus. And it was a lot of people coming. It was always packed, and it was once a week, a couple of hours, and literally every slot was booked out always, which showed me that it was needed. But eventually also I became a mom, and it was mainly afternoon and night sessions, and I just couldn't do it any longer. Which eventually also switched to a lot of friends and people knowing, switching to phone calls and doing continuing on mentoring on the phone. But I also figured the phone thing, it did help them probably, but I felt like the more personable and personal one-on-one was nicer to do, and I couldn't do it, so I stopped. But I feel like it's needed. I think it's still needed, and I think there are still way too less, things out there that are affordable and that really help. But we take on interns at APT, which I feel like is very similar to that, because if you mean it with interns and you don't only use them for shitty work, then it's also a good start to actually show people everything and teach them a lot, and let them work and let them be part of projects and give them responsibility. And we do that, and we always have interns at least 6 months, because I feel like that's the minimum amount of time to go through different phases and through different projects, and to actually learn and not just be on a superficial, I don't know, tapping into things.
Yeah. I mean, 3 years of mentoring is a lot of time. What are some common factors, struggles, questions that came up really often with people?
I feel like there were 2 or 3 things. One is they had no idea of how to budget things and how to calculate stuff. That was at least 50% of all those hours and sessions. One was network and how to, get clients and find clients. And a lot of things were like sessions were very desperate and frustrating because people back then, a lot of them thought they were coming out of uni and they should start their own stuff right away without experiencing any, you know, agency, studio or whatnot, and not doing, time in a system or in a environment that already has experience, which was a bummer for them a lot of time, because I literally always told them, if you don't have a network yet, if you don't find clients naturally, maybe you should work in an environment that can provide you with experience, that can provide you with like a lent network, because you have to know people to grow and move forward. If you come out of uni, you just literally have, maybe you're good, maybe you're not, maybe you have tools to do your job, maybe you have not. But I feel like a lot of students don't have a network, or have been, other than the bubble of uni or whatever, that educational system, and that won't bring clients a lot of times. So that was number two. Money was not one, calculation. Number two was like networking. And three was like, I feel like portfolio, knowing how to present yourself, finding your, are you a generalist? Are you like super niche? Do you have a passion for something that is off? Do you want to check boxes? Do you want to, cater to people? Do you want to go into an ad agency, a design studio? Not knowing anything about like where do you fit in and how should I draft or create my portfolio. That was the third part, I feel like. And then all of of course very specific stories in between. But those three, I would say, were the main struggles or issues or topics.
Yeah, that seems familiar. Whenever we talk to people, it's also usually positioning, pricing, client acquisition. And I get it. It's like, it is super difficult to get right. And when we started out, I can't say that we had any idea how to do those things.
No, we learned a lot of it by doing, and then some also from online like resources, but there's not a lot out there that's really accessible, I feel like. And the worst part is something you mentioned earlier, is that we're not taught this anytime, like at school, where you're always taught like how to do the work, how to do the skills you need to execute, but you're not taught anything to do with business. And the thing is, in our industry, a lot of people want to be freelancers, and that's something that everyone knows. So it's weird that we're not taught those things. I remember at university we had one like, it was like 6 sessions from somebody from Design Austria actually, who showed us how to like calculate an hourly rate, and that was it. More than that, like positioning, like thinking about where you fit in the market, how to get clients, none of that. Like we were just trained to then go off and work in an agency.
Yeah,
that's what they wanted from us.
Same.
Yeah. Seems similar again.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I started to study 2003, 2, and I feel like over the course of the last 23 years, not a lot of things have changed in that matter of like, educating the creatives out there to be aware of business if they wanted to. And you don't have to make it mandatory for all of them, but if somebody's interested, or then they should have access to it. I feel like it should always be a good mix. I also feel like, I mean, there have been waves where all of a sudden all creatives thought they have to be freelance. I also don't think that it's a good thing that every creative is a freelance. I feel like, I mean, we built this whole studio behind us because I feel like creative groups that are matching in terms of values and vibes and whatnot can build greater stuff that the single are designer. So I feel like groups are, more than their single entities, and groups in front of screens, Zooming or doing calls during pandemic. Okay, we had to do it, but we founded our studio right out of pandemic, and we knew that one thing was we wanted to have like a studio where people could come in, exchange ideas, and work together, because we are more creative, quicker. You can, have a chat. It's like you need the social component, and I feel like this is changing, and I'm happy about it, because not every creative can sit in front of their computer at home or in a shared studio, and think that's the best to do creative work. I feel like the quality is suffering. I feel like ideas are suffering, and I truly think that we are social, beings. So, but I feel like there have always been waves of, now I want to found my own studios. Then a lot of studios popped up. Then a lot of people just wanted to go freelance. Then everybody went freelance. And there always have been those waves. And I'm looking forward to what happens next, because now I feel like huge systems of like hundreds of people, like big agencies, might not work that long anymore. So they're downsizing. I don't know. Everybody has to, I feel like being reflective on who you are and what you want is very important as a creative or in the creative industries. And that's also something that is not taught. And I'm very happy, like, having, gone to Sweden. They, for example, were very different in terms of how you're taught as a creative. It was so much psychological lessons, how like being reflective, group dynamics, how to give and how to receive feedback. There's so many soft skills and things that go beyond the mere design skills or creative skills. And yet again, that's another side. It's not the budget side or the number side, but it's the psychic side of things, which I also feel like is not represented or educated well in a lot of countries, actually, not just Austria.
Yeah, I think everyone would benefit from a little bit of checking in with themselves.
Yeah, and also the receiving feedback well and giving feedback is also something I think a lot of designers or creative people struggle with, because creativity is such a personal thing. So we often take criticism, also if it's constructive, personally, and then we feel attacked, and then we're like, but my idea is so good, and then like we get upset about it. And the designer ego is always something that's kind of talked about. And yeah, it is something you really have to kind of train people out of it to think that way. It's interesting that they do that in Sweden. I feel like that's needed everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Also, when you were mentoring people, what do you feel like was there like one moment or like a really huge challenge where you thought, okay, like this is a story that will probably, I don't know, be stuck with me for a long time?
Well, I feel like when you're giving advice, people come from all different places, and a lot of people came in and they were from completely different industries. And of course, you can, find a common ground on some things, but literally there were a couple of stories where I had to tell them, you know what, I can't help you because I'm not the expert and I didn't experience anything in that field. And you have to find somebody else. And my advice is to reach out to people and ask them if they would mentor you, or spend some money on yourself in any given segment of your life, no matter if it's your body, but also in terms of your brain. If you feel like there's a person out there that is amazing, ask them if they can mentor you, and if it comes with them being paid per hour or something like that, invest into yourself, because 1 hour with a person might change everything for you. So I feel like a lot of people then misunderstood the meaning of those sessions or the mentoring I could provide. And a lot of people just came in for all sorts of reasons and from all sorts of industries, and I just couldn't help them. That was one thing that stuck with me, not in a bad way, but and then people that maybe had really humongous egos, but actually they didn't have talent. And I'm not a big fan of like talent. I think you can learn a lot in our industry, but basically they were thinking too big of themselves, which I feel like also doesn't help a lot. So a lot of people weren't humble at all. And that also kind of, stuck in my head, like, how you carry yourself and how you reflect on yourself, and that there is a lot of time. I mean, it's so many different realities out there, but a lot of times it was like completely different reality, as in detached from like the industry and what you want to achieve and where you want to work. And it was a mix of like very big egos and not being, humble, but also not knowing a lot about the industry, because, you can inform yourself. Like you said, you can always like look at a lot of things online. So be like interested. And I feel like a lot of people wanted to like do a lot of shortcuts in terms of, oh, I don't need experience, I can do it. Or I don't need information, I know everything. And for me, that always, left a bad taste in my mouth. And that's very negative. There were beautiful stories as well. Like I consulted people that founded their studios and they're super successful. I consulted people that changed industries and became artists and are selling their art across the globe. So there were a lot of beautiful stories, which is super awesome if you can help somebody. But also, like, the stuff that stuck more was the weird and the negative stuff. But I
Why
feel
is
like
this
that's
always
very
the same?
it's very human that you remember, like, both the super exciting, but also the super weird or the super negative. And for me, it also taught me a lot about ego as a creative, and doing stuff instead of talking about stuff. Always ask, because the bad or the worst thing is that somebody can say no. And that's also something that I really learned in America a lot. Like, huge time is like, do instead of talk about it. And it's like a very cultural thing. Austrians, I feel like, talk about things a lot and not do, and rather talk about things until it's dead, like you know, like a dead horse, instead of standing up, doing stuff, and being okay with maybe failing several times, but then having achieved something, right? Or having learned something. And that special, in America or the US, it showed me a lot of that. Do stuff, don't talk about stuff, be humble, put away your ego or control your ego or get in touch with your ego. And there are no shortcuts. There is no, you can't just, sleep and overnight you gain 20 years of experience. That's not gonna
Yeah,
happen. So
I think
you
that's a
have
common
to,
misconception, because
yeah.
people are because people see successful people as they just like kind of like just happen. Like, for example, you can see that with pop stars, when someone just appears out of nowhere, but they didn't appear out of nowhere. They have been working for, I don't know, a decade or at least like a few years before they become successful. I think it's
Mm.
very rare that someone just like, I don't know, since I'm currently speaking about the pop industry, that they write one song and suddenly become a one-hit wonder. It exists, yes, but it's extremely rare. And I think that a lot of people take that as an example and then just ignore that a lot of other steps happen in the background before those people have found their success. And yeah, as you mentioned many times before, I agree. There are no shortcuts. I don't think that there are shortcuts in gaining experience, in failing. I think you need to fail in order to actually learn. And without those experiences, like no one can press them into you. Even if you hear about them, they can be inspirational. They can be like something you log and think like, okay, I need to be aware of those things. But as long as they don't happen to you, I think like it's super difficult to learn and
I agree.
to find the way. I always hate this part because we are already again at the end of the time. It always passes so fast.
Yeah.
There's one question we always ask, and it's about, can you ask this question? Because I feel like I always fuck it up.
Yeah. So something we always ask all our guests is if you could go back in time to the beginning of your career as a self-employed person specifically, is there anything you would tell your younger self to make their life easier, or like some piece of advice you would give to somebody starting out that you feel like is important?
Well, for my own personal younger self, I would say you're gonna be fine. Chill, you're gonna be fine. And I would tell myself, stick to your own way and to your intuition, because I feel like a lot of times you know what's better for you and you know what's right, and then maybe your brain or your thought process overrules that. And I think I was intuitive all my life, but I didn't listen to my intuition as much as I do now with 20 plus years of experience. So I would tell myself, listen to your intuition, not your heart, because I feel like that's cheesy, but to your intuition. And intuition comes from you having experienced certain things, and then your subconscious telling you, navigating you. So it is based on information. It's not based on like hypothetical things. Those two things I would tell myself. And what was the second part of the question?
No, that was basically it.
Yeah.
I was just saying like either something you would tell yourself or someone who's starting out, but I feel like the second thing is a good piece of advice for somebody who's starting out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys.
It was so nice talking to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Never Went to Business School. Don't forget to follow us here on Spotify. And if you enjoy our content, check out our YouTube channel for more educational videos and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack.